everything wrong with a 3406B mechanical 14.6 liter Caterpillar. And why are we doing this review? It's a dinosaur, it's old, it's long gone. Well, it's because it's a great engine and it's still around. It's still in trucks, still in vehicles. So we thought, you know what, if you guys come across an old gem that you want to fix up and it's got a 3406B, these are the things you want to look out for. Here we go. All right, now again, we make these videos not because I hate every single engine and I have to see the negative in everything. I know that not one engine is perfect, and if you were gonna go out to buy one of these engines, you can check out all the other reviews we've done. These are the things that might cost you money, so these are things to look out for, and maybe use them as a bargaining chip when you go to buy it. Say, hey, you know, I know this is an issue and we don't know if that's true or not. How about you knock the price down a little bit? So this is just for you guys. All right, let's get into it. These were around since the 80s and was a good stepping stone for Caterpillar before they got into electronic engines. This is a pure mechanical engine that you would want to use in case we have a nuclear strike. You could get this thing running and still get to the other side of town. Very, very robust, and this is probably the first engine in a 400 horsepower range that could meet 1,000,000 kilometers, 1,000,000 miles before needing a rebuild. So these would be comparable to like an N855 Cummins or an 8V92 Detroit, and they were all kind of early mid 80s until late 90s type of thing. Of the three, nothing wrong with the big cam Cummins, but I would definitely take this over like an 8V92. It's better on fuel, even though it just doesn't make as beautiful music as that Detroit does. And nobody's gonna deny that, but that music was at the cost of fuel. This one was much better on fuel and did the exact same things. Add the Jake brakes and some straight pipes to this, and you've pretty well convinced anybody that this is a better engine. So we definitely find these in transport trucks from the late 70s to mid 90s, I think, something like that. Different variations of it, ABC. It wasn't until they hit E that it was electronic, and that just had to do with emissions. If it was in any other application, definitely comment down below. Agriculture, marine, whatever, let me know down below. And if there's any different variations in horsepower. Usually the marines were a little bit more, had a little bit more horsepower, so that might be something to look out for if you're looking at an engine. All right, so a couple major flaws that they had was this aluminum spacer deck plate between the cylinder head and the engine. If it is aluminum, it is a good sign that the engine's never been opened up before. This one has 700,000 miles on it. Probably has about 300 to go before we need to do any major work to it. But if it's got a steel plate on it, which was an update from Cat, then it's already had the cylinder heads off. What happened with the aluminum is it would crush, and protrusion of the liners would be incorrect, and you'd have a head gasket leak. So first sign would be that a head gasket went at some point and they had to replace that plate. There was also coolant flow issues around the back cylinder. The coolant would kind of hang out here, and that was fixed by an extra port that was drilled into the side, and that was probably done when they had to do the cylinder head, and that circulated the coolant around the back head more and fixed the stale coolant at the back and number 6 issues. These things were terrible for leaking. Not as bad as a Detroit, but they had stupid things like the oil pan gasket. You would get in an envelope about this big, and it was just a bunch of pieces that you put together, and those were prone to leak. So it would leak here. The injection pump has a couple O-rings feeding it oil, only a couple bolts on the side, and only 4 or 5, I think, holding it to the timing cover. So it would usually leak behind the timing cover there. As for the injection pump, there are a couple things. If it sat for a really, really long time, the rack sometimes seized on them, which gets expensive. And a couple things with the governors on the front and on the back. There's a timing advance unit here that uses flyweights to come out and advance the timing, and those would wear, and if it flipped past the ring that it pushed up against, with those little levers that would push up against a little ring, and if that ring wore too much and it flipped past, it would, I don't know if it caused a runaway, but caused some damage anyway. Same thing in the back, the governor itself, the exact same issue. little flyweights would go up against the ring, and if it went past that ring, it would actually carve a hole into the intermediate plate right here. Again, that'll leave you by the side of the road and whatnot, but these pumps were generally good for the same amount of time as with the engine. So if you are going to rebuild your engine, I highly recommend sending your pump out just to go over it and repair those two issues for sure, and might as well reseal the pump at it while you're at it. Rebuilding it, it's a wet sleeve engine, so it's very inexpensive and easy to do an in-frame. Drop the pan and you can pull the sleeves out, drop new sleeves and pistons and everything in it. You've got a fresh engine. Send the head out to Northtown Machine, he'll take care of that for you, and you got a brand new engine. The earlier models were 300 horse, and they had a smaller cone on the front. If you come and you look and you see this Dolly Parton edition on the front, then you've got the later model, which would increase the horsepower. As the horsepower went up, which was all done by the pump, the compression went down. So if you have an earlier model and you take a later pump and put it on it, you've got higher compression with more fuel, giddy up, you got a nice strong engine for a short amount of time, because if you were going to long haul it every day, you're asking for trouble. Anything more than 4 1/4, 450 horse, then that's about when the internal started letting go, keeping in mind that it was 13 or 1400 foot-pounds of torque. Other than that, the mechanical pump did have its disadvantages in the fact that there really was no emissions on it. So if there was no smoke coming out of the stack, basically the engine's not running. One thing I want to ask you guys, I've done a little bit of research, but not a whole lot, is if it made sense to put compounds on this and what it would be. This one is actually a 87 model with a newer pump on it, so we've got high compression with more fuel. Wondering if there is a good compound setup that somebody's already run that gives us boost down low and a cleaner burn throughout the cycle. So if you know that, comment that down below and send me to the source where you got it from. Not I would do this or I would do that. I want to hear I did this, or I know this guy did it and it worked, or it didn't work. Other than that, that is all that was wrong with this engine. If you ask anybody if the Cat is a bad engine, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that says that this is not a great engine. This led towards the E models with the electronics, and even those were very, very robust, but we'll get into one of those when we have one in the yard. So even though this review is on our channel, we are building a tank and other projects on the heavy duty channel, so definitely check that out. And definitely comment if I messed something up. If I'm wrong, if I misspoke, or if I forgot something, comment down below, because I am not an expert in everything. I'm just sharing my knowledge and appreciate your guys' input as well. All right guys, remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich, so get out there and work on it. Here we go.